I always thought my life with Emily was a quiet masterpiece. Two brushstrokes of color blending into a canvas of routine bliss. We'd been married 12 years, living in a modest house on the edge of Portland, where the rain taps the windows like a metronome to our days. I'm Jacob, a structural engineer by trade, a man who finds comfort in the predictability of steel beams and concrete slabs. Emily, a freelance graphic designer, brought the chaos of creativity into our home, her laughter a counterpoint to my steady silence. We weren't perfect, but we were us until I found the first crack in the foundation. Started with a name, Ryan Reynolds. Yes, that Ryan Reynolds, the Hollywood golden boy, the Deadpool star with a grin that could melt glaciers. Emily had been hired to design promotional art for his latest gin brand campaign, Aviation Gin. She'd gushed about the gig for weeks, her eyes sparkling as she described Zoom calls with his team. I didn't mind. Her passion was infectious, and I liked seeing her thrive. But then the calls got longer, the giggles more frequent, and her phone started buzzing at odd hours. 2 a.m. texts she'd dismiss as work stuff. I'm not a jealous man, but suspicion is a slow drip that erodes even the strongest pillars. One night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't snooping. Not yet. Just reaching for a glass of water when the screen flared to life. A chat window glowed, and there it was. Can't wait to see you in Vancouver, M. The gin's not the only thing I'm thirsty for. Signed, Ryan. My stomach twisted. Vancouver? She told me she was visiting her sister in Seattle that weekend. The lie sat there, bold as brass, and I felt the first tremor of something dark unfurling inside me. I didn't confront her, not then. I needed proof, not just a hunch. So I waited, watching her like an engineer inspecting a bridge for stress fractures. The next day, she packed a small suitcase, kissed me goodbye, and drove off, claiming sisterly bonding. I nodded, smiled, and let her go. Then I opened her laptop again. Password was still, Jacob loves them, and dug deeper. Emails, travel confirmations, a hotel booking in Vancouver under her name, and a photo attachment. Emily in a sleek black dress, laughing, with Ryan's arm slung casually around her shoulders. My chest tightened. This wasn't a work trip. This was something else. Something that made my hands shake as I printed the evidence and tucked it into a drawer. I wasn't ready to collapse the structure yet. I needed to see how deep the fault line ran. The weekend stretched like a taut wire. I stayed home, pretending normalcy, mowing the lawn, fixing a leaky faucet, while my mind churned with images of Emily and Ryan in that Vancouver hotel. I pictured his famous smirk, her head tilted back in that laugh I thought was mine alone. By Sunday night, I was a man unmoored, pacing the living room with a glass of bourbon I didn't drink. She came home Monday morning, all breezy smiles and stories about her sister. I nodded, asked polite questions, and let her weave her web. But I was already planning, methodical, precise, the way I'd calculate load-bearing capacity. I started small, installed a tracking app on her phone while she showered, synced it to my laptop. She didn't notice. She never did. The app pinged her location history. Vancouver, all right, a boutique hotel downtown. I cross-referenced it with Ryan's public schedule. Some gin promo event in the same city, same weekend. Coincidence? Hardly. Then I found her cloud backups. Photos she hadn't deleted. Emily in a candlelit restaurant. Ryan leaning close, their hands brushing. Another of them on a hotel balcony, her hair wind-tossed, his jacket around her shoulders. My throat burned, but I kept digging. Voice memos next. Her husky giggle, his low murmur. Words I couldn't unhear about meeting again, about keeping it, their little secret. I didn't sleep that night. Sat in my office, staring at the evidence piling up like blueprints for a disaster. Emily slept soundly in our bed, oblivious to the storm brewing 10 feet away. I thought about confronting her, smashing the illusion with those photos, those whispers. But that was too easy, too clean. She'd cry, apologize, and we'd limp on, or apart, with nothing resolved. No, this betrayal wasn't standard. It wasn't some coworker or neighbor. It was Ryan freaking Reynolds, a man who'd turned charm into a global currency. And I wasn't just any husband. I was Jacob, the man who builds things to last, and breaks them just as deliberately. By dawn, I had a plan. Not divorce, not yet. Something colder, sharper. I'd let her think she'd won. Let her keep spinning her lies. I'd watch, wait, and gather every thread of this tangled mess. Then I'd pull it tight. Tight enough to choke the life out of her little fantasy. Revenge doesn't rush. It simmers. And I had all the time in the world to make it perfect. Weeks passed, and I played the oblivious husband flawlessly. Made her coffee, kissed her forehead, asked about her day. She'd ramble about clients, deadlines, never mentioning Ryan, though his name hung in the air like damp rot. The tracking app became my silent ally, pings from coffee shops, late-night drives she didn't explain. I cross-checked them with Ryan's social media. A cryptic post about Portland vibes when she'd been working late. They were clever. I'd give them that. Slipping through cracks I hadn't known existed. But I was clever too, and I had patience they couldn't match. I started mapping their affair like a project timeline. Found a burner phone in her purse one day. Sloppy, Emily, sloppy. Full of texts she hadn't bothered to delete. Miss you already. From a number I traced to a Vancouver area code. Next time, your place, she'd replied. My place? Our home? The audacity lit a fuse in me, but I snuffed it out. Not yet. I cloned the phone, mirrored its data to my system, and returned it before she noticed. Every message, every call now fed my growing archive. Then came the curveball. She announced a girls' trip to LA 3 days. Just her and some old college friends. I smiled, said it sounded fun, even helped her pack. The tracker told a different story. A flight to Vancouver again, then a rental car to a secluded cabin in Whistler. Ryan's Instagram dropped a hint, ski slopes, a winking caption about chasing thrills. I sat back, jaw tight, as the pieces clicked. This wasn't a fling. It was a ritual, a dance they'd perfected, and I was the fool funding the stage. That night, alone in our house, I opened a bottle of aviation gin, hers from the campaign stash, and poured it down the sink. Watched it swirl away, a petty rebellion that felt good. Then I got to work. Revenge wasn't just about catching them. It was about twisting the knife they'd plunged into me. I needed something big, something that had hit them where it hurt, her pride, his fame. And I had an idea. A seed planted by that gin bottle, growing roots in the dark soil of my anger. The cabin trip fueled my resolve. I spent those 3 days alone diving deeper. Hacked her email, found flirty threads buried in spam folders, receipts for lingerie she'd never worn for me. Ryan's replies were cocky, casual, like he owned her time. I saved it all, a digital vault of their undoing. When she returned, tanned and glowing, I asked about LA, listened to her fabricated tales of wine tasting and beach walks. She didn't know I'd seen the Whistler snow on her boots. The pine needle stuck to her scarf. I let her talk, nodding, while my mind sharpened the edges of my plan. I needed leverage, something beyond photos and texts. So I hired a private investigator, a grizzled guy named Mike who smelled like cigarettes and cynicism. Gave him the burner phone data, the travel logs, everything. Follow her next time, I said. Get me proof no one can deny. Mike grunted, took my cash, and vanished into the Portland drizzle. I didn't tell him about Ryan. Didn't need to. The guy's face was on billboards. Mike would figure it out. Meanwhile, I played the long game at home. Started small disruptions. Changed the Wi-Fi password. Claimed it was a glitch. Watched her fumble with the burner phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Left fake voicemails from work about urgent trips. Testing her reactions. She'd perk up, ask when I'd be gone, her eagerness a neon sign. I cancel last minute, stay home, and watch her deflate. It was petty, sure, but it kept her off balance. Kept Ryan waiting. I wanted them nervous, sloppy. Then Mike called. Got something, he rasped. Next weekend. She's meeting him, big event, gin launch, Seattle. I'll tail her. You want photos, video, what? Everything, I said. Crystal clear. I hung up, heart pounding. This was it, the pivot point. I could feel the structure shifting, the weight redistributing. Soon, I'd have what I needed to bring it all crashing down. The week before the Seattle event, I turned our home into a quiet battlefield. Emily was distracted, humming as she packed for her work trip, tossing dresses into a suitcase like she was auditioning for a role. I kept my routine steady. Coffee at 7, blueprints by 8, dinner at 6. But my eyes tracked her every move. She didn't notice the new security cameras I'd installed. Tiny lenses tucked into bookshelves and smoke detectors. I wasn't just waiting for Mike. I was building my own net, catching every flutter of her deceit. Friday came, and she left with a peck on my cheek, promising to call. I waved her off, then checked the tracker, straight to SeaTac Airport, a flight to Vancouver, then a car to Seattle. Ryan's gin launch was splashed across X, all sleek bottles and celebrity buzz. I sat in my office, sipping coffee gone cold, as Mike's first update pinged. She's at the venue. He's there. Close, real close. Photos followed. Emily in a red dress, Ryan's hand on her waist, their heads bent together in a crowd. My pulse thrummed, but I stayed calm. This was data, not emotion. Saturday night, Mike hit gold. Video. Grainy but unmistakable. Ryan and Emily slipping out a side door, into a black SUV, then a hotel 2 blocks away. Mike trailed them, caught them in the lobby, her arm looped through his, laughing like newlyweds. Then the elevator doors closed, and Mike's lens went dark. Couldn't follow up, he texted. But I've got enough. Enough? It was a dynamite stack, and I held the match. I watched that clip 10 times, memorizing every frame, the way she leaned into him, the ease of their betrayal. Sunday, she texted me, "Events wrapping up. Home soon." I replied with a heart emoji, bile rising in my throat. Mike sent more. Stills of them at breakfast, her hair mussed, his smirk intact. I printed them, added them to my vault. The cameras at home had caught something too. Her on the burner phone before she left, whispering, "Can't wait. Re. The nickname burned, a brand on my pride. That night, I sat in the dark, plotting. Revenge wasn't just confrontation, it was annihilation. Ryan's fame was his shield. I'd make it his cage. Emily's trust was her weapon. I'd turn it to ash. I had the evidence, the timeline, the will. Now, I'd build the trap, slow, precise, and cruel enough to match the fracture they'd carved into my life. Emily came home Monday afternoon, her suitcase wheels squeaking on the hardwood. She smelled of hotel shampoo and something sharper, his cologne, maybe, clinging to her like a ghost. "Missed you," she said, dropping a kiss on my forehead. I smiled, tight-lipped, and asked about the event. She spun a tale of networking, gin tastings, late-night brainstorming. Every word a polished lie. I nodded, poured her a glass of water, and watched her sip it, oblivious to the cameras whirring silently above us. The trap was set. Now it was about timing the spring. I spent that week refining my arsenal. Mike's footage was gold, raw, unfiltered proof, but I needed more than a sledgehammer. I needed a scalpel. So I turned to the digital shadows. Ryan's life was a public parade, ex-posts, interviews, paparazzi shots, but every star has cracks. I scoured forums, dug through old articles, hunted for leverage. Found a whisper from years back. A hushed-up scandal, a production assistant, a payout. Nothing concrete, just smoke. But smoke can choke if you fan it right. I filed it away, a card to play later. At home, I kept Emily guessing. Switched the Wi-Fi again, claimed a security upgrade. Watched her scramble to reconnect that burner phone. She'd step outside for fresh air, her voice a murmur on the wind. The cameras caught it all. Grainy clips of her pacing the porch, laughing into the receiver. "You're terrible." I synced the audio to my vault, each syllable fuel for the fire I was stoking. She thought she was clever. I'd show her cunning had a new master. By Friday, I had a breakthrough. A friend in tech, let's call him Nate, owed me a favor from a bridge project years back. I called him, vague but firm. "Need something untraceable. A way to push a story. Quiet like." Nate didn't blink. "Deepfake text your friend," he said. Voice, video, whatever. I can hook you up. I hesitated. Tampering with reality felt like crossing a line. But then I replayed Mike's clip, her hand in Ryan's, and the line blurred. Do it, I told Nate. I'll send you files. The game was shifting, and I was ready to rewrite the rules. Nate delivered fast. Saturday night, he showed up with a laptop and a grin, setting up in my office while Emily was out grocery shopping. He loaded the software, showed me how to stitch audio from her burner calls into new contexts, how to layer video snippets into something damning. This ain't legal, he warned, half laughing. But it's clean. No fingerprints. I didn't care about legal. I cared about impact. We tested it. Her voice, giggly and warm, spliced into a fake confession. I can't stand Jacob anymore. Ryan's all I need. It was eerie, perfect. I thanked Nate, sent him off with a bottle of scotch, and got to work. The plan crystallized. Expose them, but not directly. No courtroom drama. No tabloid splash with my name attached. I'd let the world do the heavy lifting. First, I crafted a narrative, short clips, doctored audio, a trail of breadcrumbs suggesting Emily wasn't just a fling, but a schemer bleeding Ryan dry. One video had her admitting she'd leaked gin campaign secrets for cash. Another showed her laughing about his marriage to Blake Lively, calling it a sham. None of it was true, but it didn't need to be. Doubt was the weapon, and I wielded it like a torch. I seeded it carefully. Burner accounts on X, anonymous tips to gossip blogs, a slow drip into the online ether. By Sunday night, the whisper started. Hashtags like #RyanAffair and #Gingate flickering to life. Emily came home, oblivious, chattering about avocados and traffic. I watched her unpack, my laptop humming with uploads in the next room. She didn't know the storm brewing, didn't see the noose tightening. But Ryan would soon. His PR team would scramble, his fans would turn, and she'd be collateral damage in the chaos I'd unleashed. That night, I lay beside her, her breathing soft and steady. I didn't sleep. My mind raced, plotting the next move. This wasn't enough, not yet. The public humiliation was a start, but it was impersonal, distant. I needed something closer, something that had cut her to the bone. And I had an idea, one so cruel it made my stomach twist. But I pushed the guilt aside. She'd chosen this path. I'd just pave it with thorns. The online fire spread faster than I'd hoped. By Monday morning, #RyanAffair trended. Blogs ran wild with speculation, and Ryan's team issued a terse no comment. Emily scrolled X at breakfast, frowning. Weird drama with the gin campaign, she muttered. I sipped my coffee, feigning disinterest. Celebrities, huh? She nodded, distracted, and I saw the first crack. Her fingers tightening on her phone. She didn't suspect me, not yet, but the ripples were hitting her shore. I let them lap, quiet and patient. Mike called that afternoon. She's spooked, he said. Met him at a diner outside Tacoma, low-key, hoodies up. Argued a bit, looked tense. He'd snapped photos, Ryan's jaw clenched, Emily gesturing wildly. PR's probably on his ass, Mike added. I smirked. Good. Let him squirm. I told Mike to keep shadowing, then opened my vault. Time to escalate. I pulled a real clip, her whispering, you're my escape, and wove it into a fake call where she threatened to spill his secrets unless he paid her off. Uploaded it to a sleazy forum, tagged it with his name. Within hours, it was everywhere. Emily came home late, pale and jumpy. Rough day, she said, avoiding my eyes. I cooked dinner, her favorite, pasta with clams, and asked gentle questions. She deflected, claimed a client meltdown. I didn't push. I didn't need to. The cameras caught her later, pacing the backyard, hissing into the burner phone. This is getting out of hand. Fix it. I watched the footage live, my pulse steady. She was unraveling, and I hadn't even shown my hand. That night, I finalized the next phase. Ryan's fame was cracking. X was a cesspool of memes and accusations. But Emily still had her life, her pride. I take that too. I drafted an email from a dummy account, posing as a concerned friend, attaching the fake blackmail clip. Sent it to her sister, her best friend, her boss. People she'd hate to disappoint. The subject: is this really Emily? I hit send, leaned back, and waited for the fallout to rain down. Tuesday dawned ugly. Emily's phone buzzed nonstop. Her sister first, voice shrill through the speaker. What the hell, Em? Blackmailing a celebrity? Then her boss, curt and cold. We need to talk. Now. She stammered excuses, claiming hacks, identity theft, anything but the truth. I watched from the kitchen, flipping pancakes like it was any morning. Everything okay? I asked, voice mild. She snapped, just work crap, and stormed upstairs. I plated the food, humming, as her world tilted off its axis. The emails did their job. Her sister called again, sobbing. I trusted you. Her friend texted a single word. Disgusting. Her boss scheduled a disciplinary meeting. Emily locked herself in the bathroom, water running to mask her frantic calls to Ryan. The cameras caught snippets, her begging, they think I'm extorting you. His reply was muffled, sharp. Handle it, Em. I can't. I smiled into my coffee. He was cutting her loose, just as I'd hoped. The deepfake was a phantom blade, and she was bleeding out. By afternoon, she was a wreck, hair tangled, eyes red. I might lose my job, she admitted, voice small. I hugged her, murmured comfort, all while the tracker pinged Ryan back in Vancouver, safe behind his PR wall. She leaned into me, fragile, and I felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe, but crushed it. This was her harvest. I was just the reaper. That night, she drank too much wine, rambled about misunderstandings. I nodded, refilled her glass, and let her sink deeper. Meanwhile, I prepped the next strike. Ryan's shield was his charm, his golden boy glow. I tarnished it beyond repair. I pulled old aviation gin ads, Emily's designs, and mocked up new ones. Her face, his logo, slogans like Betrayal in every sip. Doctored audio of him confessing to using her for inspiration while mocking her talent. I'd flood X with it, let his fans turn rabid. But I held off for now. Emily's collapse was the appetizer. His would be the main course. Wednesday, Emily barely left bed. She called in sick, curled under blankets, phone silent for once. I brought her tea, played the doting husband, while my laptop hummed with progress. The fake ads were ready, sleek, vicious, believable. I leaked them through a new burner account, tagged influencers with big followings. By noon, #aviation scandal was trending. Fans raging, Ryan's a sleaze. Boycott this trash. His team fired back. Legal threats, denials, but the mud stuck. I watched the chaos unfold, a quiet thrill in my chest. She emerged at dusk, hollow-eyed, asking, why's Ryan all over X? I shrugged. Some gin drama, I guess. She flinched, retreated. The cameras caught her later, staring at her laptop, scrolling the mess I'd made. She didn't cry, just sat there, frozen. As her affairs fallout swallowed her life. Her sister had cut contact. Her boss emailed a suspension notice. I'd stripped her world bare, and she didn't even know my hand held the shears. That night, I finalized Ryan's ruin. Took real footage, him at that Seattle launch, smug and laughing, and layered in audio of him bragging about stringing Emily along. She's a nobody, easy to play. The fake Ryan sneered. Uploaded it to a gossip site, watched it explode. X lit up. Outrage, betrayal, his nice guy mask shredded. I leaned back, satisfied. He'd survive, maybe. Fame bends but doesn't break. But the scars would linger. Emily slept beside me, restless, muttering in dreams. I stared at the ceiling, plotting the final act. This wasn't over. Not until she faced me. Not until I saw her break under the weight of my truth. The public shame was a warm-up. The personal reckoning would be my masterpiece. I'd built it slow, brick by brick, and soon, I'd watch it crush her. Thursday morning. The house felt like a mausoleum, silent, heavy with unspoken rot. Emily shuffled downstairs, a shadow of herself, her phone clutched like a lifeline gone dead. She hadn't eaten since Tuesday. I made toast, set it before her, watched her pick at it. "You okay?" I asked, voice soft as velvet over steel. She mumbled something about stress, avoided my eyes. I let her stew, knowing the online storm I'd unleashed was battering her from every angle. Ryan's silence was the loudest blow. She checked that burner phone obsessively, but no pings came. I spent the day fine-tuning the endgame. The deepfakes had done their work. His reputation wobbled, her career teetered, but it was still too distant, too abstract. I needed her to feel my hand, not just the world's. So I pivoted inward, dug through our shared history, photos, letters, mementos, and built a new weapon. Found a card she'd written me years ago. "You're my rock, Jacob. Always." I scanned it, altered it in Photoshop, swapped Jacob for Ryan. A small twist, but it'd gut her when the time came. That afternoon, she got a call. Her boss. Voice clipped through the speaker. "Suspension's permanent. We can't have this mess tied to the firm." Emily crumpled, sobbing into her hands. I stood by, offering a tissue, my face a mask of concern. "What happened?" I asked, feigning shock. She choked out, "It's all lies, Jacob. Someone's ruining me." I hugged her, let her cling, while my mind hummed with the next step. She thought this was random cruelty. Soon, she'd know it was personal. Night fell and I planted the seed. Left my laptop open on the counter, a doctored email on screen, her confessing to Ryan about faking love for me to fund their escapades. She found it, gasped, "What is this?" I turned, slow and deliberate. "You tell me, Em." Her eyes widened, panic flaring. "It's not real, I swear." I didn't yell, didn't accuse, just stared, letting doubt creep in. She stammered, fled upstairs. Phase 1 of the reckoning had begun. Friday, she was a wreck, pacing, muttering, unraveling thread by thread. I kept the pressure subtle. Left that altered card on her pillow, watched her find it, her face blanching as she read Ryan in her own handwriting. "Where'd you get this?" she demanded, voice shrill. I shrugged. "Found it in the attic." "Funny, huh?" She shook her head, frantic. "I never wrote that." I raised an eyebrow, said nothing. Silence was my chisel, carving cracks in her lies. She spent the day on edge, jumping at every notification. None from him, all from a world turning against her. I escalated quietly, printed photos from Mike, her and Ryan in Seattle, Whistler, Vancouver, and tucked them into her sketchbooks. Her purse, places she'd stumble across them. Each discovery hit like a slap. She'd freeze, shove them away, but the weight piled up. By evening, she confronted me, trembling. "Someone's messing with me, Jacob. These pictures. I don't know how they got here." I leaned back, calm as stone. "Maybe it's time you told me the truth." Her mouth opened, closed, guilt flickering. She didn't confess. Not yet. But the dam was creaking. Meanwhile, Ryan's empire shook harder. My fake ads and audio had sparked lawsuits. Distributors pulling aviation gin, fans boycotting en masse. X was a war zone of hashtags. Hashtag Ryan the Rat, hashtag gin fraud. His team flailed, blaming cyber attacks. But the damage was done. I watched it unfold, a quiet satisfaction blooming. He'd cut her loose to save himself. Now he'd drown in the wreckage I'd built. But Emily was my focus. She'd feel the blade up close before I was through. That night, I left a final clue. A USB drive on the kitchen table, labeled Emily's Secrets. She found it after I went to bed, plugged it in. I'd rigged the cameras to catch it. Watched her face crumple as it played. Her real voice, real moments with Ryan, spliced with my fakes, painting her as the mastermind. She didn't sleep after that. Neither did I. Anticipation kept me sharp. Saturday broke her. She came downstairs, eyes hollow, the USB clutched in her hand. "Jacob," she whispered, "we need to talk." I sat at the table, coffee steaming, and waited. She spilled it all, Vancouver, Whistler, Ryan's charm pulling her in. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "I love you. I just lost myself. I listened, face blank, letting her words hang like damp laundry. When she finished, I leaned forward. Lost yourself? Or found someone else? She flinched, begged forgiveness. I stood, walked to my office, and locked the door. The confession was sweet, but the revenge was sweeter. I pulled the lever, sent an encrypted file to her sister, her friends, her ex-boss. Every clip, every photo, every lie I'd spun, bundled with her real betrayal. Added a note. She admitted it all. Ask her. Within hours, her phone erupted, fury, disgust, silence from those she'd leaned on. She banged on my door, pleading, "What did you do?" I didn't answer. Let her feel the walls close in, her life stripped bare by her own voice echoing back. Ryan wasn't spared. I mailed a package to Blake Lively. Anonymous, untraceable, full of stills, audio, a timeline of his duplicity. X lit up that afternoon. Rumors of divorce, her cryptic post about trust breaking, his golden image shattered, sponsors fled, his empire bled money. I didn't care about her reaction, just the fallout hitting him and by extension, Emily. She'd tied herself to him. Now she'd sink with him. Back home, I faced her. She sat on the couch, broken, staring at nothing. "You knew," she whispered. "All this time." I nodded, slow and cold. "You built this, Em. I just lit the fuse." She wept, begged me to stop. I didn't. The cruelty wasn't in the act. It was in letting her live with it, knowing I'd orchestrated every note of her ruin. Sunday, the house was a tomb. Emily didn't speak, just drifted room to room, a ghost in her own skin. I packed a bag. Slowly, deliberately, let her watch. "Where are you going?" she rasped. "Away," I said. "You'll figure it out." I left her there, surrounded by the wreckage. Photos scattered, phone dead, the USB looping her shame on the TV I'd left on. Drove to a motel, checked in, and waited for the final act to play out. Her sister called me that night, furious but curious. "She says you framed her." I laughed, cold. "Ask her about Vancouver, about Ryan." Silence, then a click. Her friends followed, texts, voicemails, all demanding answers I didn't give. By Monday, Emily was alone. Family gone, career ash, Ryan a fading echo. I'd stripped her bare, not with fists but with precision, a surgeon's cut to her soul. Ryan's fall steepened. Blake's lawyers filed papers. Public now, splashed across headlines. Aviation gin tanked, stock plummeted, his charm a punchline. I watched from my motel, sipping cheap bourbon, X scrolling on my phone. Every hit he took was a brick I'd laid. Every tear she shed a nail I'd driven. It wasn't joy I felt, just a hollow, sharp-edged calm. Revenge doesn't fill the void. It carves it deeper. I mailed one last gift. A bottle of aviation gin to their hotel. The one from Seattle, addressed to Ree and M. Attached a note. To broken promises. Didn't sign it. Didn't need to. The desk clerk would toss it, maybe, or keep it. But the gesture was mine. A final twist of the knife. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back, and let the silence settle. A week later, I went home. The house was empty. Emily gone. No note, just echoes of her absence. Furniture untouched. Her clothes missing. That USB still plugged in. Screen dark. I sat on the couch, tracing the cracks she'd left, and felt nothing. Not triumph, not loss. Just the weight of a structure rebuilt alone. Neighbors said she'd left in a cab, eyes swollen, no destination shared. I didn't look for her. She'd reap what I'd sown, wherever she landed. Ryan faded too. Tabloids moved on, but his shine was dulled, his deals dry. I saw him once, months later, on a late-night rerun, thinner, forced grin. Didn't matter. He was a footnote now, a casualty of my design. I sold the house, moved east. Boston, fresh slate. Steel beams to anchor me again. Kept the vault, though, those files, a quiet trophy I'd never show. People asked if I'd remarried, rebuilt. I'd shrug, say, once was enough. They didn't know the story, didn't need to. Emily's betrayal wasn't standard, neither was my reply. I'd torn her world down, brick by cruel brick, and walked away clean. Not a hero, not a villain, just a man who'd balanced the equation. Sometimes, I'd pour a gin, different brand, bitter on the tongue, and think of her laugh, his smirk, that first crack in the foundation. Then I'd set the glass down, unfinished, and move on. Revenge was done. The rest was just time.